agreed to do this collectively as well. So the EQ is the emotional body. It's responsible for that 7 to 14 time range. And this would be where your emotional patterns were laid out. So you could even talk about, going and healing the inner child. Go back to that time of 7 to 14 and then also know a little bit about your code. Go read your gene key code, understanding that, and be like, oh, interesting. I can see how I was learning or experiencing this code, this information in my reality at that time. And I can also see, like, let's say my EQ, the shadow of struggle. Okay, so then I could go and I could be like, I could see where the shadow of struggle was programmed into me from 7 to 14 big time. And where is that shadow of struggle still kind of a part of my life? And so then I can go and I can read this code. And the idea here is that you just read the information. Now you've become aware of it. It's something you can see. It was unconscious, and now you can see it. I once was blind. I once was lost, but now I see. And so now you can kind of see the coding and be like, oh, interesting. And then you can see the recoding of the higher sphere, which is honor for me. So to go from struggle to honor. So whatever your code is in the sphere, you can see the shadow of it. And then you can see how you can move from that into the higher aspect. And then the next one is your IQ. This is going to be the code that is responsible for your mental plane activity, and how your mental thinking and the way of looking at the world was kind of programmed in around that time frame. So then now you go read that code and you can see the shadow of that code, and then you can see the higher aspects of that code. So in this moment in time, you start to immediately, you're going to a very precise, important aspect of what I'd like to call your quantum blueprint. You're putting this connection together of the time of development of that phase. You've got a little bit of information here that can, again, it's neurolinguistic programming. It's beyond the mental. It doesn't matter if you even understand the content, but you're exposing yourself to this information, and you're recoding your mental plane. You're recoding your astral body, your astral plane, your emotional body. You're recoding your physical body, and form follows frequency. So now we're always working with the frequency, not the form. And I know this to be true 100%, that when you start to work in the frequency field, the form never needs to be worked with again, ever. And so this can be disappointing for someone who's in the business of serving the physical form. But eventually we won't need to serve the physical form in the way that we've been taught before, because we're not cleaning up things or fixing problems. We're going back into the programming of the computer, and we're rewriting everything from the origination point, and then everything else responds to that. It sounds like a little bit of magic, but this is quantum physics. I'm putting it in simple human terms, but we're working with quantum physics, quantum mechanics. So we're using the emotional plane, the mental plane, and the physical body to inform us of where we're still in what we brought up earlier, indifference, which means we don't yet remember that we're working together as and operating as one field of energy, one body of light. So when we can move beyond the indifference, which code was that I was talking about when I said that, indifference? 55. Was it? Well, I know we're in the 55, but there was this other one. It was the 16, mastery, turning on your mastery, which the shadow is indifference. So. 18, why was I bringing that in? You know why I was bringing that in? Because it's about perfection. So who's in for bringing yourself into mastery and perfection and freedom? That's what we're working on today. Project Mastery, Freedom, and Perfection. Okay, so this is the idea. You've got the codes now to go in and kind of unlock. There's lots of different series online if you want to do programs that Richard Rudd has created that are like months-long contemplation processes. It's okay if you operate more on that level, but I'm just like a sharpshooter. I want to get us right into immediate impact, no time, no space, shifting through density, and making quantum leaps, and this is kind of the shortcut. So there's certainly other ways that you can go about this if you want to spend more time getting into the details, but these are kind of really quick points. Once we go through this and we understand this process, Well, then you just have new hormones being secreted into your body that I like to call honey, nectar, that are permanent states of illuminated bliss and ecstasy. This is our permanent state, to feel high all the time. It's not to judge if you're not there, but I am here to help you remember our natural state is feeling peace and ecstatic in our body all day, every day. Anything keeping us from remembering that natural state of ourselves is where we look for the constrictions and the restrictions that have kept us from opening our heart and moving into what I'm talking about here, because our planet is getting blasted with energies right now. Gooey, ooey, yummy energies. Now, if we still got some stuff to clean up, it can feel a little uncomfortable, it can feel destructive in a way. And we allow those pieces that need to go here, the old stories and the old history of our whole self, so that these new energies can come into the body. So the song I always sing is leave the story, and I, not just for this, but anytime I find myself playing out a story in my life that's keeping me in the illusion of separation from another, we all do it. This is what I say to myself, but I'm also talking about for our history here as karma. We're leaving karma behind, but it's leave the stories behind to unlock the gates. 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 And the heart gets bigger. Unlock the gates. The gates are unlocked. Unlock the gates. Those gates that think we need to protect ourselves or keep ourselves safe or have held on to anything that's happened in this 21-year first 3 cycles of our incarnation. When we can leave that behind, we unlock these gates to bring in the planetary consciousness. And you can see eventually the heart gets so big that we're just not here to play out karma stories for the rest of our lives anymore. Or even healing journeys. Eventually, we will be the initiators of many beings. If this feels resonant, if you are in the healing arts, you may be the one that's assisting many in unlocking these gates in your ways and your gifts. But the main thing is you're tuning into yourself and you're turning on. When Bruce Berger was here, he had a workshop. I don't know if you guys know him. He was visiting here. He offered a workshop, and it was called The Healing Power of Presence. And he wrote a book called Anatomy of the Esoteric, which, of course, I was like, how is this man here talking about anatomy and esoterics? This is what I've been studying since I got here, and I didn't know anything about until I got here, anatomy and esoterics. And he'd brought in information about polarity integration and things like that. But I can summarize whatever that book is, it's a pretty big book, into one thing. When we can embody presence in our body, sometimes, but let's hope that we can get to the point where we're always in embodied presence. Everywhere we go and everything we do is an act of God. And the healing power of presence, of holding a field of presence in a group of any people, can really make a difference. And it's beyond needing to be seen or needing recognition for this type of work I'm talking about. It's quite humanitarian what we're talking about, to be in that embodied presence and then to bring that everywhere that you go. Whether you call it a technique or anything like that is up to you, but to then bring that presence anywhere can transform anyone in the physical, emotional, and mental aspects. Eventually, one of these gene keys, the 52, in fact, which I like to connect to Sirius star system, the brightest star that you can see in the sky, that's close to Orion's belt always. If you look up to see Orion, you'll see Sirius there. It talks about the still point, the 0 point, the eventual transcending of frequency, and even the ability within your auric field to stop someone's thoughts, to bring someone into a 0 point mental state where you're not getting caught up in all that stuff anymore. And so, I'd like to imagine as I'm talking to you about it that I must be doing that as well, but that to remind us that we all have the ability to do that. everywhere we go when we understand and we start to embody our mastery, like we're talking about here. So we leave the stories behind to unlock the gates, and look at this angel on earth. What's interesting too is many of you have probably seen that show that came here with Zac Efron, and it's called Down to Earth. I thought that was pretty interesting. That's what I feel like we're remembering, is that we came down to earth to make big changes in the earth and to assist humanity. You could see it like, in fact, I'm going to read you something from the 144,000. I want to read you this because specifically the code was pulled to 44. And so if you have the 44 or the 50, but again, it doesn't matter because you're all the codes, but still, if you have the 44 or the 50, then I'm specifically talking about these ones. Gene Keys, Living Library. Living Library. We are the library. All the information is stored inside us like books and files. And so when we can change the way we look at things and understand, you start to get the keys to access this information that I'm talking about without having to study or retain it. And then you only just need to access what you need to access when you need to access it, so we're not overloaded with holding tons of information. This is the way that our new technology comes on and we start to interpret information. We are a computer, you know. We're a computer that can get a virus, but not when you're the programmer, right? So that's the difference, is if someone's programming you or you're programming yourself. So we're remembering that we're talking in these terms of reprogramming our computers. And we're talking in terms, because we're talking about the 44 and how it has the ability to make fractal impact, as if we're holding the mainframe computer, the mainframe unit that's tied in and networked to all the other systems, that when the mainframe makes a change, that it eventually impacts any other system that's attached to it. So to understand that humanity works that way because we're so deeply connected shows you the power of the weave of what's going on and what we can ripple out through humanity, through this understanding. Oh my gosh, and it's so fun. Okay, so first of all, as